A lot of people look at black feminism and think that it is a movement designed to push the rights of black women, fight for the rights of black women, and advocate for black women. However, this is not the case and has never been the case. When it comes down to black feminism, it is nothing more than an extension of the institution of white supremacy. And anyone who understands history would understand that black feminism's roots come from a white supremacist power structure. Now, the black feminist will say that she is fighting because she is being oppressed by black men. However, black men have never really had economic and political power, the two structures white supremacists use to oppress white women. When it came down to black men throughout history in America, especially during the Jim Crow period, a black man was a second class citizen in America. He had very little voting power, he had very little economic power. So he could not create policy that could discriminate against black women. In many cases, black women and black men had to work to make ends meet together. Both parents had to go out and get jobs. It's because they did not have economic and political power. They did not control many businesses in the black community. They did not control politics in the black community. They did not create company policies that told women things like they had to quit their jobs when they became pregnant. They did not create policies that allowed men to sexually harass them. Black men did not create those policies, again, because they did not have economic and political power. So a black man could not oppress a black woman, nor could he do things and impose his will on black women because he was being dictated to by white men. Back in the Jim Crow period, a black man's life pretty much was at risk every day. A black man could be killed, beaten, or lynched based on the arbitrary whims of a group of racists. And the same thing could happen to a black woman. That's how both genders were being oppressed. But back in the 60s, when the white feminist movement was coming to rise, a lot of black women decided they wanted to join this movement because they saw an opportunity to have the same rights and privileges that white women had. Some even wanted to become like white women. So they formed up, joined with the white feminist movement, and then they joined the white liberals' welfare state in the hopes of getting economic and political power. And because they joined the white liberals' welfare state and then got college educations through his government grant programs, they began getting government jobs and then started building an economic base. And as they built that economic base, they started to become enforcers of white supremacy. And this is how they began imposing white supremacy heavily in the black community because they began enforcing the policies of white supremacy for white men and white races. And a lot of people don't understand this. They don't understand that your black feminist basically is a white supremacist because she enforces the policies that maintain power in black communities. Because she has the economic power, because she has the political power, and because she is a large voting bloc and a large business bloc, she pretty much controls many of the dollars and pretty much enforces those policies in place. When you look at the welfare state, it created a culture for white supremacy because it pushed a narrative and a way of thinking into the minds of many African American women. And that's how your black feminist pretty much became a white supremacist. And then as she came on these corporate jobs and she got these jobs making this money, again, she began pushing the narrative of white supremacists and the culture of white supremacists. This is why your black feminist primarily is the right hand of white supremacy. And you can see that based on the books that many black feminists produce, many of the films that they produce, and much of the content they produce. Because much of the content many of your black feminists produce is extremely misandristic and has a heavy slant of hatred towards black men. And this, again, reinforces many of the ideas white supremacists have regarding black men. If you look at a book like Alice Walker's The Color Purple, or Push, the novel that the movie Precious is made by Sapphire, every black male presented in there pretty much reinforces concepts and old stereotypes regarding black men such as the Jim Crow stereotype of the black brute, the coon, and many other black stereotypes are reinforced in their work because the black feminist, again, sees the black man in the exact same way that the white supremacist sees him and the white feminist sees them. All three of them see black men as less than. They see him as a second class citizen. And all of them use their economic and political power to keep the black man in a state where he is under their control because they fear that if this black man were to rise, that he would challenge their economic and political system. So most of the resources that this black feminist gets, again, come from white supremacy. The welfare state came from a white supremacist concept. The jobs that this woman gets comes from a white supremacist economic base. So that's why she's the right hand, and she will go out and enforce his policies in the black community because she gets most of her money from white supremacists. She gets her needs met by white supremacists. She gets everything that she gets from white supremacists. This is why she basically is a white supremacist and will go out and defend white supremacy because that is where she gets her needs met, her economic needs met, her social needs met, and her political needs met. And you just have to look at who many of these black feminists are married to understand this because many women like your Angela Davises and your Alice Walkers were married to white men and had relationships with white men. So they're talking about black female empowerment, but when we look at who they say that they love, they're right there with the white man, deifying him, worshiping him, and praising him, promoting the whole concept of white supremacy in their narrative. Because if these women were about empowerment, again, you would think they would be trying to work with the black man. But they're not going to work with black men because they say they're being oppressed by black men. But in actuality, they're going to go work for the oppressor, the one who has the real economic and political power, and continue to promote his model for a society that pretty much works against black men but benefits them by giving them crumbs from the table. Now, many of these black feminists will sit there and say, again, they were degraded by black men, abused by black men, but the irony is they can't see how they're being degraded and abused by these same white men. And all they're doing is enforcing white supremacy, the foundation that created all this degradation and oppression. Now, your black feminist pretty much believes that she's going to empower her community, but when we look at her actions, all she does is oppress her community because, again, she is an enforcer of white supremacy. She is the woman who will go out here and do the dirty work that white supremacists don't want done. If they want to go out and close a daycare center, they don't go out and send a white woman to do it because they don't want her image tarnished. They don't go out themselves and do the dirty work because they don't want their image tarnished. What they do is they go get one of these black feminists or one of these black females and put her at the forefront and have her do the dirty work and take the brunt. No different than Olivia Pope does in Scandal. So they use her to be the fall guy and use her to be the one who they do the dirty work from, and everybody sees her as the bad guy, and they see the white guys in the back as the heroes. And that's one of the other modes that they use for the black feminist force. She is just a tool that is used to promote white supremacy, to be the face of white supremacy, when white supremacists don't want to be the bad guy, and when they want to can maintain their power and control over the black community. And they've maintained power and control over the black community with the help of black feminists over the last 40 years. They have promoted a culture that has pretty much led to a gender divide in the black community. They have pretty much promoted a narrative of dysfunction in the black community. And they have pretty much maintained economic and political power that has stagnated the black community at their expense. They have pretty much made a bunch of money for themselves. Meanwhile, the black community has pretty much fallen into decline, where Koreans, Arabs, Indians, and many others have benefited economically at the expense of black people, using the black economic base as a way to move themselves up into the middle class, all because the black feminist has economic and political power and uses it to oppress African Americans in America. And a lot of people will sit there and say that the black feminist is fighting for black female empowerment, but overall, she has been the enforcer of white supremacy for the last 40 years. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.